Hi everyone and welcome to this new bonus lesson for volume 4. The first thing I will show you in this bonus lesson is how to create a simple rollover effect, and you can see that for that purpose I created two materials. They just have a image loaded in color channel, so nothing fancy. Now let me just doodle quickly what I'm trying to achieve here. So I'll create a simple plane like this, and I will texture both sides. So one of these guys will be in front, and of course one of these guys will be at the back. So that will be the first thing we will do for our setup, and the effect I'm going for is that we have some sort of a control when we would actually pull a little gizmo from here to here, that this plane would break up in pieces and simply rotate to show the image on the back side. So simple roll over effect. Let me get rid of this little guy, and we'll start by creating a plane, and actually I can enter some values here. So let's go with 300 with 200, so a little bit wider than higher. So let's actually rotate this guy, and let's pull it upwards somewhere around here. So I will use this opportunity to use polyfx object because I want to show you how this can work on a simple polygon object. So I can really convert this, but you can do the same thing with cloner. Okay, so everything we will do here with polyfx is completely transferable to other MoGraph generators. So let's load that polyfx in our scene, and if you remember correctly, polyfx has to be made a child of polygon object. So let's hold Shift key and hit this polyfx. That will make it a child object. I'll just hit NB, which is the same as this Gerard shading lines, so I can actually see the polygons, because I believe it would be much easier to see what is going on. So let's, before we tackle this polyfx guy, let's simply texture our object properly, and I'll load both materials, but we'll simply say for this guy to be on front, and for this second guy to be on back. Now you can clearly see we have front and back textured properly. Now this polyfx guy by itself, it doesn't do anything, at least nothing that is currently visible, but all it is doing, it's breaking these polygons into faces, into components. So we have an effectors tab. So any effector from here will work exactly the same as it works with the cloner or matrix or fracture object. So let's load the plane effector, and currently you can see it simply did what it's supposed to do. So it moved all these guys 100 centimeters in Y. So what if I want to uncheck this position and use rotation values? Let's see what happens. So you can see it is rotating per polygon basis. That is what this polyfx does. It simply breaks up the polygons and considers, well, relatively speaking, it considers all polygons to be clones, so you can simply apply all effectors just as you would on MoGraph cloner or matrix object. Now, as you probably remember, effectors have an fall-up option. So if I change this to linear, I can affect this setup in a linear manner. I really hope you remember some things from the training, and as I said before, if I want to have the effect from left to right, then I have to obey this axis. This axis is the X axis, and we are going into positive direction because where the arrow points, it is positive direction and opposite is the negative direction. I'm pretty sure you already know that. So now the effect will become apparent only when I pull this guy here. And there is a small change. I really think you should be able to see that. And what is changing is this rotation. So let's try 90 here. You will see this change to be more prominent. So I can simply control the rotation of these guys and the corresponding image will show. So if I want the back image to show, I simply have to use double the value here. So let's enter here times 2, and you see we have the other image showing up, but with a slight problem, which we will solve right away. And obviously, for the ones that haven't noticed, this image is oriented wrongly because it really doesn't look like that in real world, and I can demonstrate that. So it should look like this. Now, there is really fast solution to this one. You simply have to select this guy here, select the plane object, and you'll notice that if you enter the texture mode, you really cannot do much in terms of rotating the texture because currently the mapping set here is UVW and it's pretty much as it is, and you cannot modify it outside the body paint. Now what I will do, I will simply change the projection. Let's try cubic, and I will just temporarily turn off this texture mode and turn off tiling, and I will right click here and do a fit to object command. It will ask me if I want the sub-objects to be included. No, because this polyfix doesn't have anything to do with this, so no, and nothing changed. We still have the same effect, so nothing will change here, but you will see that now I have the ability to rotate this texture via this texture axis mode. So if I simply rotate this guy by 180, I will get the effect that I need. So let's give it a shot now. You can even enable this garage shading and give it a shot. So how about that? Simple as that. Now, of course, you can expand this setup, maybe load, let's say, delay effector would be really nice here, and in spring mode. And let me just emphasize the strength a little bit. So let's try 75, and the effect will be very pronounced. So make sure that this delay happens after the plane effector. We talked about these priorities in MoGraph. So if you want to see anything in terms of delay, you have to play the time. Otherwise, you won't see the effects. It's simply impossible for you to see. So let's see it play, and let's now pull this guy so you can see the effect. So this is really nice. Actually, you can stop this and maybe increase this to, let's say, 1000, so we have enough time, and play once again. It really doesn't matter where this guy is positioned in Y or Z. It simply takes only the X axis into account. So here is a nice effect. So something like a rollover with a springy delay. You can also do this with cloner and fracture and matrix object. Okay, really nice and simple effect, and I really wanted to show you this on a simple example so you can understand the concept and you can then easily apply it to other generators. Let me now show you something a little bit more elaborate. In this lesson we will solve one problem that many users have trouble with, and that is how to create a really fast, efficient, dynamic and responsive chain, because in many setups you can see some sort of physical simulations and attempts with spline dynamics, but actually I think MoGraph gives the best solution in terms of quality and speed, because you can have, let's say, 1,000 dynamic links in the chain and the system will still be really responsive. So let me show you how to build a MoGraph chain. This setup is not so advanced, but it really demands a little bit of concentration. So you can see that I already here have 2 links, and that they are oriented just as they should be in a real chain. So you can clearly see that, and I will undo this. And with MoGraph, the cloner is almost always an answer to a solution where you have to have a lot of objects which have to interact on some level. So I will create a cloner. I will drop both of these guys in here. Now you can see it really cloned these guys 3 times according to these settings. And first thing that I want to do, I want to establish the length of the chain. So how many links? So in this case, let's be conservative. Let's say 50. Now do have in mind that 50 links in any dynamic simulation inside Cinema 4D is really heavy calculation. So when I say conservative, I mean conservative for the cloner. Now let's actually lower this number and bring links together, and let's say something around 10. And to orient them properly, I will use a target effector, because that effector also offers me to say to each consecutive clone to look at the next one. So consider all these clones as nodes. So if I say next node here, now you may think that nothing happened, but it actually did. But the problem is this cloner has this fix clone enabled. So if you uncheck that, watch what happens. So now the power of target effector comes to play. So if you disable it, watch what happens. And if you enable it, it simply tells next node to orient itself properly. You also have previous node. You see, it kind of gives different results. Now, it's often a good idea to tell this target effector where your up vector is. So where is your up direction, relatively speaking, and clearly that is y plus. So let's set it to y plus, because otherwise you could get some problems with link flipping and stuff like that. So let's get back to our cloner. Now, since this cloner is a root of my object and I will use it to move the chain, I think it's much better idea to go here in negative direction. That will push this chain downwards. So you can see we have a slight intersection here, and we'll simply search for the right value here. So let's say -8. It doesn't have to be perfect, it just has to be good enough. You can be really picky and do a decimal value here to cover this small gap, but I think that is an overkill in this case. So what now? Now we have 50 links, they are oriented properly, but we want a dynamic chain we can move, which will swing and do what it is supposed to do. Now here comes the knowledge from rigging, and if you watched volume 3, you'll have no problems in following this. So first thing that I want to do, I want to create a trace, because I want to create a joint chain exactly on the positions of these guys. I can do this manually, but this will be really time consuming. So instead, it's much better to use a tracer object. So it will trace the cloner. Now if I set this to connect all objects, I will get a spline here. Okay, so I have to hit play to refresh. So There is also a refresh problem. So if we put this guy under the cloner, then we won't have that refresh problem because it has to trace this information from the cloner. Now, if I simply convert this tracer with C, I will get a spline, and that spline, let me just show you that. I hope you will be able to see that that spline will have a point exactly on the location of axis of each link. Okay, I think you can understand that. So we can use this spline to create our joint chain. So we'll go to our model mode, and here under character menu we will do a spline to joints command. So this command creates a joint chain. Here it is. Simply control clicked on this guy and it unfolded all, and neat thing it did for us, it simply created a hierarchy of all these joints, so we don't have to do this manually, and we avoided the trouble of creating all this by hand. Now, one neat thing in release 14 is this naming tool, and what I want to do with this naming tool is I want to replace all these joints. So I will replace the name joint with, I'll put a $sign here and we'll type N. So N will stand for number, and this $sign will simply tell number them in consecutive manner as you progress through hierarchy. So if I click replace name, it will number them from 0 to 49. So we have 50 joints exactly as 50 links here. So I can do folding, fold all. Now let me get rid of this spline. We don't need it anymore. And here with this joint chain, I can change the visual appearance. So I will put this to be a line, and for this size of these guys, let's go to maybe, let's say 2. And since we have additional options to set color, I will set a color here for those guys. And here under display, we can also go with maybe circle. So it is much more vivid, and we can hide this effector display in the viewport. Now, these guys, if you remember correctly from our rigging course, are not oriented correctly. So Z-axis has to point down. So let's unfold all, select the first one, and simply run a joint align tool. So with default settings, let's hit align, and as you can see, all these guys have aligned properly. That was the easy part. Let me just hide this cloner so we have only this joint chain. So this is actually the joint chain. Now, I hope you know that when you add a IK tag to your joint chain, and here you have to put the end of the chain. So in this case, there is this joint number 49. And I will not create a goal for this object because the only thing I need from here is this dynamics. Okay, so I will enable this, and let's fold this all so it's nice and neat. And now here under this IK tag, because dynamics are enabled, if I will simply select this first joint and move this, hope you will see this in action. You see I have some movement happening, so I can even press play. So this is not really natural as you would expect it. So let's change some settings here. Let's maybe go with higher drag value. So let's try something around 20 or so, and becoming a little bit better. Stop this for a moment. Let's go here even step further. Let's try something like 30 or so, and This is better. I can even go back with this and maybe even more. Let's try 40. Looks better, but I would even go higher. Let's try maybe even 60. Let's try how this works. And this is much more natural. I'll just increase this rotation hold just a bit, so it's a little bit more stiff and leggy. Let's go even maybe 40, see how that works. And I think this is really good. And see how responsive and fast this setup is in the viewport. So I'll reset the position like this, hit play, and the chain will settle. Now, here is the tricky part. You want to transfer this behavior of these guys to these clones here. So how will we do that? We will do that with another cloner. So let's create a cloner, and I will subordinate this complete join chain to this cloner. So the reason for it is I want to use the tracer object to trace these joints as clones. So let me first enter 0 here, because we just need one chain, and I will uncheck this fix clone. Then this guy will point downward. Now we can be picky here and under transform tab set the color of the cloner to the exactly same color we set for these joints, because the cloner overrides things. Now what I wanted to show you here is let me just hide this, guys, and I will load a tracer while my cloner is selected, so the tracer will trace the cloner. But in order to avoid any problems with refreshing and priorities, I will simply put this tracer after the cloner, because it has to know what to trace, and things, as I mentioned earlier in the training, are executed from top to bottom. So this guy will have problems tracing something that is after him. So it has to happen before him. Okay, I hope that makes sense. And if we set these settings here correctly, we will see a spline. So the spline will appear, the spline that will trace all these guys in here. So since we will not trace vertices, we can turn this off. We will connect all objects, because we want to connect all the objects under this cloner with a spline. So we want to trace it, and here we will have to use immediate clones mode. So watch how this spline appears. And just to demonstrate that this guy is tracing correctly, let me hit play and move this cloner. So you can see this spline is really inheriting the dynamics from this joint. So this is really nice solution. So how about that? That is really cool. Let me stop this, reset the position, and hit play once again to settle things down. And now, since we have a cloner that contains our links, why wouldn't we simply clone these guys onto another object? And you can clone on tracer, as you remember from the training, because internally tracer is just a spline. Simply treat it as a spline object. So here we will change the mode to object, and we will simply drop the tracer here. Of course, we will set the count to exactly the same amount of joints, so 50. And the trouble we are facing here is actually in this cloner, because it has count set to 3, and that is messing up this tracer, and at the end it's messing up this cloner, which clones onto this tracer. So if we put here 1, so just a single chain, here is what we have now. As a result, if you simply forget everything we did, and I really hope I haven't lost anyone during this lesson. So if you simply disregard that and press play and use this guy here, you'll simply get a change. So look how fast and responsive it is. And once you will play around with these dynamics, you'll get naturally different results. You can also make this chain collide with colliders set here. So this is really great. There is also a much more advanced setup where you can actually create automatic link generation, but that is really far beyond the scope of this tutorial, even though I have such setup, and I think this is much better idea. So determine the amount of links at the beginning and work from there. So this is really fast, real time, with collisions, with proper deformations and dynamics. So I really hope you enjoyed this one and that you will not have any problems with doing realistic chains in Cine 4D. That's it. See you in the next bonus lesson, volume training, or project series.